Human beings are social creatures, but we are also cautious creatures. Every interaction with another person contains a certain degree of risk, emotional risk, reputational risk, or psychological vulnerability. Because of this, we learn to protect ourselves long before we learn to open up. To protect ourselves does not mean we dislike others. It means we are aware that people can misunderstand us, hurt us, take advantage of us, or judge us. And because we cannot predict how others will interpret our intentions, we build small psychological walls as a precaution. These walls are not always visible. Sometimes they appear as politeness, sometimes as distance, sometimes as selective silence, and sometimes as a smile that hides uncertainty. We also guard ourselves because we know our own mind far more intimately than we know the minds of others. We know our motives, our fears, and our reasoning. But with others, all we see are actions without context. When our inner world feels fragile or unfinished, we feel the need to protect it from misinterpretation. Vulnerability is not simply exposure. It is exposure without control. This instinct is not irrational. In a world full of diverse personalities, values, and expectations, it is only natural to avoid giving strangers, and sometimes even loved ones, too much access to the sensitive parts of ourselves. To guard is to preserve dignity. To guard is to avoid humiliation. To guard is to prevent the feeling of being reduced to something we are not. Opening up requires trust, and trust requires a belief that the other person will not weaponize what they learn about us. Without this belief, self-protection becomes our default mode. When one person guards themselves, the relationship becomes slightly more difficult. But when two people guard themselves at the same time, the difficulty compounds. Both sides become cautious, polite, and restrained, yet neither is willing to be the first to lower their defenses. At first glance, this mutual guarding feels harmless. After all, nothing explicitly negative is being said or done. But underneath the surface, both sides are constantly calculating, what should I reveal? What should I hide? What can I say safely? What would be risky? These calculations consume attention and create a layer of tension that prevents genuine connection. Many modern relationships, whether romantic, familial, or professional, suffer from this silent tension. People want closeness, but they also want protection. They want to be understood, but they also want to avoid being misinterpreted. They want to be accepted, but they cannot tolerate the possibility of being judged. These desires pull in opposite directions, producing relationships that are neither intimate nor comfortable. This tension can be seen in countless ordinary scenes. Two colleagues who talk politely but never share what they truly think. Two friends who laugh together but never talk about anything that might reveal vulnerability. Partners who coexist peacefully but never disclose their fears, their insecurities, or their disappointments. On the surface, everything appears fine. Underneath, both sides feel slightly lonely. The tragedy of mutual guarding is that it preserves dignity but prevents intimacy. It protects us from pain but also prevents warmth. We avoid being hurt, but we also avoid being seen. In trying not to lose, we fail to gain. To navigate social life, humans develop masks. These masks are not necessarily lies. They are more like filtered versions of ourselves, adjusted, softened, polished, or disguised for the sake of social harmony. A smile can be used to show joy, but it can also be used to hide tension. Politeness can express respect, but it can also conceal discomfort. Silence can signal agreement, but it can also signal caution. Children learn these masks early, before they even understand the complexities of adult relationships. They notice that being too honest can create trouble, that being too direct can cause embarrassment, and that being too emotional can make them vulnerable. And so they learn to manage impressions. This management follows them into adulthood, shaping how they present themselves to the world. These masks serve a purpose. They allow society to function. They smooth interactions between strangers. They prevent unnecessary conflict, but they also come at a cost. When masks become habitual, we forget how to take them off. We forget who we are without them. We interact not just through words, but through layers of caution, computation, and restraint. Sometimes we encounter moments where a mask cracks, in laughter that feels too sincere, in tears that escape unexpectedly, in a story that feels too personal, or in silence that feels too heavy. In those moments, we sense the person beneath. This is why intimacy feels rare and valuable. It is the moment when the mask becomes unnecessary. People often assume that authenticity is easy, but in reality, authenticity is expensive. It requires safety. It requires trust. It requires the belief that what we reveal will not be used against us. Without that belief, masks remain firmly in place, and relationships remain limited to what is socially acceptable rather than emotionally real. Although humans desire connection, we do not always respond positively when someone suddenly moves closer, emotionally, socially, or psychologically. Sudden warmth can be disorienting. Sudden intimacy can feel suspicious. Sudden enthusiasm can feel intrusive. We instinctively ask ourselves, why now? What do they want? What are their intentions? This reaction is not simply cynicism, it is a form of self-protection. When someone approaches us gradually, trust has time to develop. Signals can be read, boundaries can be negotiated. But when someone approaches rapidly, the necessary time for interpretation is skipped. Our brain cannot assess the risk fast enough, so it defaults to caution. In evolutionary terms, unfamiliar approach behaviors were often associated with danger, manipulation, or hidden motives. Even in modern life, sudden friendliness can be associated with sales tactics, persuasion attempts, or emotional dependency. Our brain learns these patterns and responds accordingly. Curiosity mixed with alertness. This is why many people feel uncomfortable when a stranger compliments them excessively, shares personal information too early, or asks intimate questions without first creating context. The discomfort is not irrational. It signals that the pace of emotional disclosure is mismatched. Trust is not only about content, it is about tempo. Interestingly, this mechanism applies not only to strangers, but also to old acquaintances. A distant friend who suddenly seeks closeness may awaken old vulnerabilities. A family member who suddenly becomes affectionate may trigger suspicion. Even romantic interest can provoke fear if it arrives without explanation. We often assume that intimacy is built by increasing warmth, but intimacy is actually built by matching pace. Too slow and nothing happens. Too fast and the other person retreats.